we have to get to passing because that's the final stage, right?
Well, it wasn't the final stage of the book, but man, I knew you would love this chapter.
Oh, it's one of my favorites because I've and I'll let you riff, but I just feel like the thing it's done as someone who constantly goes back and watch games from older decades is as you move into the 2010s in the last few years, you create more opportunities for passing lanes, passing windows, and open space for players to cut into that area and receive a pass, and it's really just created a passing revolution, more so than the positionless revolution. We're in a golden era of passing because of this.
Yeah, I mean, it occurred to me, I was watching old Magic Johnson highlights, and he has so many great ones. There's just one I remember where he like turns his head and he like almost like kind of eyes wide open. Yeah, you're mimicking one of the ones he did. I forget who that was against. The like kind of with the hands and kind of going behind to the other side, and just how magical, pun intended, those passes were. And then I watched like a lot of these games. It's like there's so many examples of players just like either exaggerating the no look or just not looking at all. Like it's almost like every possession there's a no look pass. I mean, maybe a slight exaggeration, but not that much of one if you really watch these eyes. And I was sort of wondering, like, wait a minute, like, how is that possible? I know I did a piece a number of years ago on John Wall and the jump pass, where this cardinal sin of sports, this one that, frankly, commentators, like, whenever there's a turnover, you always hear, can't ever jump to pass, can't ever do that, that's a cardinal sin. John Wall, like, turned it into a weapon because he could jump higher than everybody, so he would jump, and he would, like, twist his head around to the person he thought he wanted the defense to think he was passing to, but all along he was passing to somebody else, and he used, like, his hang time as a weapon. I just kind of wondered, to me, like, that was kind of one of the most profound things I had noticed about the game over the last 4 or 5 years. It's just how many more of those we have. And from not just point guards, from all sorts. So that took me down this rabbit hole, and it kind of occurred to me two things. One, this is sort of a no-duh point, but I think it does need to be said. You have more space on the floor, the same number of people, they're spread out more, you can see more stuff. Everybody's got to read the floor as a single unit, more so than as a bunch of individual relationships, because of the way pick and roll coverages work, because of sort of the space on the floor and all the movement that's happening all the way around you. You're going to be lost if you try to read any of it individually. Like, there's just no chance. And I actually go deep into the academic vault on this one, kind of looking at vision studies, how quickly do people see certain things in their environment, and what is the mechanism by which they actually see. Because players are coming off a pick and roll, they're not just reading their own defender or even the help defender or even the guy behind them. They need to kind of contextualize the other relationships altogether, so that it's almost like when I come off this screen, if this guy does that means this guy is open, but if he does this, that means that guy is open, and it's all kind of contextual, interdependent relationships. And because the game is spread out more, because the three-point shot is what it is, because we have access to more video where we can kind of essentially go through like exercises of our own in very heightened specificity, everybody just kind of knows the mapping of the floor better. And the reason that connects to no-look passes is now the whole point is we're not trying to beat people who can't read what I can read, because everybody kind of has a certain high level of baseline of the mapping of the court. What we need to do is we need to make them think I'm reading it one way, but then actually I'm reading it the other. And that's why the no-look pass has really exploded. It's almost like that's the tool to beat defenders who are just more used to mapping the entire court as a whole. It's like the best way to trick a bunch of experts is to create an illusion, and that's kind of what's happened. And I just thought it was like a perfect analogy for basketball now. And yeah, that chapter took a long time to write.
It's a great chapter. You have another fantastic metaphor that applies about reading Morse code and things like that. But the thing that I think you build to is these passes now, they're more regimented in a way. where you've got,
Yeah.
okay, spread pick and roll. How does this work? Well, if this low defender does this, then I know my guy's going to do this. If they don't help, then I have a pocket pass to the roll man. If someone's in the dunker spot, I'm going to look for the lob. Lobs in and of itself, I mean, you just mentioned no-look passing. We could probably talk about lobs for 20 minutes because they just really didn't exist in basketball until, I don't know. I want to say at least the 80s. You could see some before then, right?
Mostly only also in like fast break situations.
Fast break,
I mean,
yeah.
You look at all the Gary Payton, Sean Kemp lobs. Like, how many of those are in a half court set?
Right. Shaq, of course, had the spin counter lob from the corner. That was one that was very common. But, wherever they first started getting thrown, they were there. But it just wasn't a really common thing to see. And now it's part of this regimented passing vocabulary, to borrow from our friend J. Kyle Mann, who likes to describe all this chunking and grouping of information. Mm-hmm. So the offense knows this information and the defense knows it, and they each have rules, and it's kind of like this read and react cat and mouse game. And to your point, a couple years ago, I came up with like the 5 tools of passing. And I don't know if there's 5, and I don't know if this is comprehensive, but it was things like speed of delivery and anticipation, because again, goes back to defensive rotations, but it also connects to this idea of like the passing revolution. A lot of great passes, in the history of basketball, you need to anticipate what's happening. You can't pass reaction. You can't have a reactionary pass.
No,
put it that way.
No, absolutely. I mean, the whole point of a great pass is like, why does it exhibit so much joy for the viewer? Like, you talk to almost any basketball fan, they'll say, "I just love great passes," and the reason is because it's the same reason why we love magicians. We see something, and they show us something that we did not see.
Right.
And that's kind of the visceral joy of passing, is exactly that. You have to be able to read something. You have to trick the viewer essentially into thinking like, I thought I could see everything I could see, but then you saw something else. I mean, that's why we love passing. It's the same reason. So
that's the manipulation part. That was where I was going, is that like one of those tools that I think you get to when you get to higher and higher levels is different ways to manipulate the defense. So it makes sense that the no look is one of those ways. You're going before they expect it, or you're turning your head a certain way, or you reference John Wall and the ability to jump and use that. Another one that just didn't exist really is the sort of floater lob where you're Trae Young and you're coming down the lane. Harden was maybe the person who really perfected this. And your mechanics in terms of taking the ball from your live dribble off the floor and moving into a jumping motion as you pick the ball up and move it upward are the same whether you're shooting or you're throwing a little 6-foot or 8-foot lob to the big man in pick and roll or in the dunker spot. These just didn't exist. Now they're all regimented. And so and you talk about this in the chapter, and I won't give it away, but like the idea that we keep getting a higher and higher and higher baseline then demands that the better and better passers have more and more tricks, and there's more complexity, makes my job basically allowed to exist, because you have all these sort of like chess match dynamics taking place all over the court that you only notice when you stop and rewind the tape like 10 times, and you're like, oh my, last possession he did this, and this possession he did that. Yep. It's just, it's absolutely amazing. Thanks for listening. You can find the full episode of this Thinking Basketball podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you enjoy podcasts.